Well, we're talking today to Howard Jones. Get to talk to him again after the second of the four albums back in 2019. Now after the third of the four albums of this four-piece process, if you will. The last album in 2019 was Transformed. This album is Dialogue, and it comes out on September 9th. When I don't recall, I don't know if you recall chatting back in 2019, but you were talking about the four albums back then. And I find fascinating looking back on that in 2019 and going, okay, Dialogue is going to be the next one. Fast forward 3.5 years, and that topic seems to have evolved since then. Well, I'll start by asking you this. What year did you first decide the third album was going to be called Dialogue?
Well, it was right at the beginning when I made this determination to commit myself to doing four albums, because I thought that's the only way that I'm going to make sure that I do them. If I tell my lovely, wonderful fans that I'm going to do it, then I've got to stick to it.
Right.
And, because it's such a commitment to make an album for me. It's months and months of work and a lot of heartache and, tears and joy and the whole bit. It's emotionally a roller coaster, but it's great when it's done. You know what I mean? And I think that if you are an artist then, and you expect that people are going to stay with you, then you've really got to keep, making new work that has your whole heart in it. So that was the idea. I can't remember which year, but I said over the next decade, I'm going to do four albums, and I named them at that point. And I'm so pleased that I'm 3/4 of the way through now. So
it's working.
I'm going to make it.
You are, yeah. But the fascinating thing with that name, that title, and seeing the arc of the titles, it makes sense. There's clearly a storyline to all of this. But then what happens over the last 3 years? The pandemic happens, but at the same time, there's what most would say is the social media siloing of interaction, dialogue. When you lyrically started to work on these songs, and I know I Believe in You was, at least according to what I read, was the first one, but did the concept of writing lyrics to match the title change as the pandemic happened, and as the other thing that I referenced, or anything else that you were observing in society maybe evolved from when you were first thinking of the title earlier in the 2010s?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. I think what struck me was how relevant that subject dialogue was. I couldn't have predicted it was going to be so relevant for the time we're in. There's two main threads of that. One, because we were locked away and we couldn't see each other, there was a definite lack of confidence I felt, not only in myself but in my friends, about being able to have conversations again face to face and to be able to express how you felt. So there was that going on, caused by the pandemic. And then the other thread was the way that social media has become so vicious and anonymous. People feel they can say whatever they like without ever letting you know who they are. And so I dealt with this in the lyrics as well, about the people who hide away and put vile things out about other people without ever having to take responsibility for it. So it really felt like that was the right subject to be dealing with, at that time. And also, my belief that it is uniquely what human beings can do. We can talk to each other, we can discuss things. And even though we may have differing opinions about things, we can still find a common humanity within each other, so we can find some things that we can agree on, And I think it's so important that we all become dialogue experts, so that when there's a problem arise, difference of opinion, whatever it is, that we don't cancel people. We still keep working on finding the common ground. And I think, it's so important to me, that theme.
The word lockdown comes up in two lyrics, back-to-back songs, which to the point of writing during lockdown time makes that all the more visceral, all the more reflective in the lyrics. Well, first, where did you spend most of any particular, and I know not everywhere in the globe had particular lockdowns, but there were restrictions, of course. Where did you spend most of your pandemic writing time?
Well, I was in the States doing a trio tour with Robin and Nick, and it got increasingly worrying that we were not going to be able to get home, because they were cancelling flights and gigs were getting cancelled and people were getting ill. So we had to abandon the tour and come home. And then we faced, lockdown in this country where we couldn't go out. So I spent most of the time in the studio and, doing meetings on Zoom, and it being a very, very different lifestyle to what I was used to. And I mean, it was good in a way that I was able to really work on the album and do lots of experimenting and give things time that I wouldn't normally have the time for. But on the other side of it, it was it was a lonely time because we couldn't see each other and we couldn't see family, we couldn't see friends, and so all those things were coming up. It's like how much that I missed all that. I missed the interaction with people. I missed the friendship and the camaraderie, and so I wanted to, it really include those themes in the album. And so it was so appropriate, really, that it was called Dialogue. I think I was lucky with that. Yeah.
As a lyricist, then, how do you take a concept that is so associated with one particular event and make it a universal theme? So if someone listened to this album but had been asleep for the last, literally had been sleeping for 3 years and woke up and had no idea that the COVID-19 pandemic had happened, and hearing all of these references, what did you find a challenge, if any challenge, to take these references and make them something that every human can understand?
Yes, I think so. I think, though, what's happened is that lockdown has become like a word that means more than it did at the time. It's like, you can think of being locked down as somebody or a person who decides to stop engaging in the world, and stays at home and doesn't get involved with what's going on. And I think that could be that lockdown for me now means a state of mind as well as what it did for us, physically, for those people who had to go through it. So I suppose, the antidote to having that lockdown mentality is to be brave and courageous and engage in conversation with people and trade ideas and really try to get to try and open one's heart to the person you're talking with, so that you can have a real heart-to-heart communication. And I think there's a lot of joy to be had in that. And I mean, once we can be courageous enough to do it, there's so much. It's so rewarding. It's one of the best things that we can do as a human being. And so I really wanted to encourage that in the lyrics.
That there you go. That was actually just going to ask about the word encouragement. That's the thread I see throughout these 8 tracks, and that you acknowledge the frustrations of either this time or any time, could be 30, 40 years ago, and there are still things happening. You talk about to feel love about their by day, by night, and these people that are having conflict, but then to not wallow in that, to say, okay, but we still can come together. What was your balance in terms of acknowledging the problem and conveying the solution, which leads to the album title? How did you try to balance that throughout these songs?
Well, it's interesting you should mention that song. fight by day, fight by night. Why do they hurt each other so? And I was thinking of a sort of like an AI entity who arrived on the planet and was looking around and going, oh, what are these human beings doing? They're fighting each other. They're having conflicts. They have wars, and they sometimes kill each other. Why do they do that when, they have this ability to have be conscious of the universe and and have this amazing consciousness that they can appreciate that they are alive. And so I wanted to explore that, in simple terms, how crazy it is that we should be still battering each other, and murdering each other and having fights and, discord, when it is so amazing that we've been born as human beings and we've got this amazing consciousness to choose to really lead an amazing life, regardless of circumstances. And so I really wanted to explore that with that song, and encourage, like you said, the idea that to be appreciative of being alive, especially after having survived the pandemic, it can really lift one's spirits and make one like really enjoy every day a bit more, even though things are really tough at the moment, and they probably will continue to be. But we can still find something to be so glad that we're alive and we've been born in this time.
A two-part question, but the answer may be the same. Which song is most representative of the project? AKA, I mean, you could call that the single, but I know there's that also can be a whole commercial consideration. And or which song means the most to you personally?
Yeah. Well, I think my favorite is Formed by the Stars, which I somehow with that song, the lyrics really came together for me, and I'm always agonizing over every word and every phrase, and with that song, the chorus, formed by the stars, umbilically connected, ability unlimited, the future is selected, the spider web is plucked and every part affected, all your efforts count, no tiny grain rejected. And I'm always trying to get sort of, and I felt with that song, I felt it was the best I'd done with that. And I've been writing songs for 40 years, and to me that's my best chorus so far lyrically, because it says everything I want to say, but in a very sort of it gives you images, formed by the stars. We are made up of the elements that were created in stars. Literally, we are created from those elements. And so we are connected to the whole universe in that sense, because those elements may have been created near the Big Bang or whatever was the initial birth of our universe, and so it makes us these universal beings, and I just wanted to reaffirm this appreciation for that it is incredible to be born as a human being again, and that everything we do has an effect. So it's really important what we do, so because when the spider web is plucked, the whole web reverberates with that action. And so I'll always, that will always be my favorite on the album. That's what I probably wanted to get over most. Yeah, with the album, yeah.
The end of the album, I see a little bit of a parallel to Transform, and maybe that was intentional because I remember when I interviewed you back in 2019, I noted that you went from the emotion of Mother into Stay With Me, and here it goes from the emotion of To Feel Love into I Believe in You. There seems to be a similar kind of setting up and then build setting up into a maybe a difficult, I don't know how one would call it, lyric, and then into something bright to close this.
Yeah.
Was that intentional?
Well, yeah, yes, it was. I mean, I Believe in You was the first lyric I wrote as we were coming out of the pandemic. So I was thinking, lots of people, including myself, had their confidence knocked by this event, being locked away and thinking, oh, am I ever going to be able to join society again? Am I ever going to feel safe again? And I thought it's really important to put out this idea that what would you say to your twin self if they were going through a crisis of confidence? And you say, hey, come on, I believe in you. I really believe in the potential of your life. I really believe that you are an amazing person, unique and incredible, and please believe in that and then build on that. And so yes, I was thinking those two songs do kind of make a nice pair, really, in a way, because one is that this AI element in is saying, you're amazing, you can feel love. The AI can't do that. You can feel love, you can feel these emotions. So why do you hurt each other? And then the final song, I Believe in You, is about us helping each other to realize our full
what
believing that we can overcome anything. Yeah.
Did you find your approach to writing the lyrics evolving over the course of the album's creation?
Yeah, yes, I think so. I think that's an ongoing process altogether for me, because I think when you start out, when I started out, with Humans Live, Dream into Action, it was very much coming from my gut, if you know what I mean. I wasn't really thinking too much about it. I was just thinking, oh, this is what I feel, this is what I want to say, and blurt it out, in whatever way. And as time goes by, and I kind of expect that a lot of artists would say this, that you become more aware of what effect your work is going to have, and you become much more picky about what, the fine detail of what you say. So I think, that's an ongoing process for me, and I will keep trying to do that, try and be more articulate and try and be more interesting and have the lyrics, evoke images and philosophy that is readable for people, and means something to them in their lives and is useful. So that's the journey that I will be on until I stop doing this. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned Humans Lib, and Steg Reed did the album artwork for that and did the album artwork for this. So what made you have him do the album art for this, and what was the concept involved with the dialogue cover?
Yeah, well, Steg's been a lifelong friend, and I've asked him to contribute artwork, throughout my career, and in fact, I bought him his first computer, and because he was really a traditional painter, but he had this real desire to work in the digital realm as well, and so because I love him so much, I I said, look, I'm going to get you an iMac, and you'll be able to. And from then on, he's just created the most incredible things. And he in the same way, he keeps evolving his technique with it all. So I just said to him, the album's called Dialogue, and everything that means to you, communication, trying to understand other people's point of view, having courage to talk to each other, don't be silent, all that. I just said all those things to him, and I so trust his brilliant sense of what makes art work, to just go with it. And within like a week, he came back with that exact image, and I just was blown away with it, because every little detail has some reference to Dialogue. Even there's a log in it as well. And that's Steg's sense of humor. But my favorite bit is right at the top. It's tiny, and it's the devil talking to an angel, and they're having a dialogue. I thought, yes, that's so, he gets me, he gets me. So yeah.
The music on this continues the electronic approach. There's guitar at the end, but obviously quite electronic. How do you find your music evolving as an artist from even the last two albums? And I gave both of them a fresh listen in yesterday and today, leading up to this interview, to put everything in context. But there's an evolution even within thise. Even with the thus far trilogy. How do you find your music evolving in this particular project for Dialogue?
Yeah, well, I was, because I couldn't really work with anyone else, and I was in isolation. It was really, that was a big factor, I think, that I couldn't even really play it to other people properly, because, you need to be there in the room and explain a few things if you're going to play people new work. So I was really on my own with it, and just had such fun with getting my synthesizers out and spending a whole day or 2 or 3 days just on one sound. And it was a luxury, really, that I could have the time to do that. And I just thought, I still have my passion for electronic music. I love it. I didn't go to the piano, I think, at all during this album, which I normally do. I normally get the chord shapes and stuff, at the piano, but I didn't touch. Sometimes I didn't even know what key I was working in, because I wanted to do it more instinctively, by hearing what I'd done and then adding something, the next step, without sort of doing my usual music head process on it. And I sort of was feeling things out more, and the other thing was that I wanted to do loads of backing vocals and lots of harmonies, and also make my voice sound different on different tracks. And there was one funny moment where I finally got COVID and I lost my voice, except for a very sort of thin, sort of squeaky, whispery type of tone. So I thought, well, I'm just going to use that then. I'll sing very quietly, and I'll give my voice a different character. So that kind of worked out in a weird way. Yeah.
What is, if there is one, of the sounds you were creating? Is there one of the 8 songs you can point to and say, that was really cool what I came up with? Are there any that stand out, any synth sounds or any electronic sounds that stand out that way?
Yeah. There's one I'm particularly proud of, which is on Formed by the Stars, and it's basically a Baroque solo. And I was thinking, well, that's like the weirdest thing to put here, but I just thought, yeah, it's a Baroque theme that style that I'm playing in, but I want to really mess with the synth sound. So I played it in, just without quantizing it or anything, and then chopped it up into tiny little bits and made it do really weird stuff. And I'm so pleased with that because I don't often do solos because I've still got a hangover from the hating bands that did like endless solos and stuff and just, showboating and things. So, so when I do a solo, it's kind of a big event for me. So, but I wanted to make it, but every time I hear it, I go, oh yeah, I love that. I'm so glad I did that.
Cool. When you've been out on tour, doing the North American tour, now there's the European tour coming up. Have you gotten between either fans or hearing online any feedback from the songs that have come out thus far? What's the response, and has anything surprised you yet from fans?
Yeah. No. So far, it's all been very even. The singles that we've put out, they've had a very consistent appreciate. I wanted to do this because, when you get a whole album at the same time, a lot of people may be tempted to just play the first 3-4 tracks, but I didn't even sequence the album in that way. It's kind of more meant for vinyl than it is for a CD even or linear on streaming. So I thought if I put really have a drip feed of singles, then people will have a chance to really listen to each track as it comes, and then have a few more to listen to when the album is finally out. But it's because I think really you can write your own rules now with the streaming environment we're in. So no, I think once it finally emerges on the streaming service, I will get more feedback about. But I'm already. It's so weird. I'm already thinking about the next record. So it's always like, oh yeah, that's something I did like months ago.
Well, and
terrible, really.
That's okay. As your mind is constantly working, we all do that to some extent.
Yeah.
And that leads to my last question about Global Citizen, and when do you feel like you can really start to home in on that? I think in the last interview you were talking about how you prefer to take time to really focus on a project as opposed to just the scattered writing. I mean, each artist has their own approach. So when do you think is that time? Or while I know I've heard a 2023 release date, is that more a plan, but it will come when it comes?
No, well, I've got a lot of touring to do this year, which will take up most of the time, and I'm working on a piano solos album that is well advanced now, so that will come in between. But I really will be starting it next year because it's my 40th anniversary, and I really want to, for the release of the first singles, I want to celebrate that with a new release as well. So I will start it. I don't quite know what it's going to be like yet. I think it'll be electronic, but it might have more guest appearances by friends because I'm thinking, oh yeah, Global Citizen, I really must be more collaborative with this next record because Global Citizen is really about collaboration and working together, and so the music must reflect that. So I will, I'm not quite sure how it will turn out, but I've met so many great musicians during my time that I would love to have a contribution from them on the next record. So I'm saying that, but I don't